morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is kind of behind me, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Gillian, Bellinger, and Chris Martin, both with Misfit Improv and Acting School here in Asheville. And guys, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, so that's Chris and that's Gillian. And I should mention that Gillian Bellinger is an improviser, actor, and teacher. She's taught improv for the Second City and a variety of schools in both Chicago and LA. She toured with Mission Improbable, I love that name, the most successful touring improv show for colleges. As a working actor, appearing shows for Disney, Hull, VH1, and Red Letter Media. And now, perhaps most important, Gillian, you're on the Blaine's World podcast.
So that's true. I'm going to add it to my bio right now.
Okay, now we're big time. Chris Martin is a certified in theater teacher with a master's degree in theater and education from UNC Greensboro. He has taught theater for 23 years and teaches improv classes all over Western North Carolina. And Chris, you started what, when you were 4? Was that it? You were like the youngest kid to ever start teaching improv?
I started, well, I'm 46, but I started acting when I was in kindergarten in the kindergarten play as Santa Claus, but I've been doing improv all my life and acting, and I started teaching improv right when I graduated from UNCA in 2000.
And by the way, since you mentioned, let's jump in on what you just said there. So you started actually, your first role was in kindergarten as Santa Claus?
It was. That was my very first role.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
I do. I remember it very well. I had a trash bag with my stuffed toys in it, and I had the beard and everything. And it was very exciting. That's when I first knew I wanted to do theater and got excited about doing theater.
Well, here's the idea, Chris. I may have shared it with you, but I want Gillian to keep this in mind too for the school, is I have this great idea for a fundraiser. So nobody's picked me up on this yet, but I want to do it, that everybody would recreate their very first role. Okay.
Oh,
so like, for example, you were Santa Claus. Do you have a tape of that somewhere?
Do not.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
But wouldn't that be great, Gillian? So we could then show, people want to ask Leaf if Leaf wants to see it or somebody wants to see it. What was the role about? You could recreate it. And wouldn't that be a fun thing? Everybody would create their very first role, So keep that in mind, Chris. When I give you a chance to revisit Santa Claus. So in kindergarten, talk about your acting since then. Did you do in some other things since?
Yes, I went to UNC Asheville and I graduated and became a teacher right out of college. And I've been acting at UNCA and the student forums and doing improv. I was in an improv group called the Oxymorons. I did that and I acted all throughout my teaching career. I was in plays and musicals and Asheville Community Theater at Hart and all over Western North Carolina. I have a lot of acting and improv experience.
And you're still in a bunch of stuff, right?
I am. I'm actually in an improvised play now called Family Secrets. It's with the Desto Theater Company, and that's exciting. It's my first role as in an full improvised play. So that's exciting. So I'm doing that now. That's my next big production.
Okay. When's that going to be?
It's going to be in December, but they also have several others coming up. There's going to be one in October, and there's going to be one in November as well. So they're doing
some off the air. Get back to me about that. Let's do a show maybe on that as well or something. Also, both with Gillian and Chris, I think Chris knows about it, but I also maintain an entertainment page on Facebook. And so if you want to put yourself up on Facebook, that gets a pretty good following as well. So anytime you have something, feel free to put it up on the entertainment page also. So Chris, let me ask you the question then too. So you do all these different things. Do you have a favorite thing you do in terms of either teaching or the acting or the improv or out of all of them? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I love teaching, but I also love taking classes myself. I'm an improviser and I take classes at Misfit myself. I've been taking classes at Misfit since July. And I'm in at the performance lab with Joe Carroll right now. And it gives me a chance to hone my own skills and become a great improviser. And then I can take those skills and teach them to kids and adapt the games and adapt the exercises. I'm also taking a character class right now with Gillian on Wednesdays. It's a character long form improv class where you get to really dive into characters and create characters for sketch comedy and improv. So just taking classes right now has been really fun and exciting for me.
Now, I think also, Chris, I knew you or met you maybe the first time. You used to take your students to the Hop. Was that the Hop ice cream?
I did. We used to perform at the Hop for about 10 or 11 years. We had a troupe called Gaggle of Giggles, and we performed once a month at the Hop, and it was a lot of fun. We did family-friendly short form improv. So
okay, it was so cool, Gillian. I don't know if did you ever get to see that?
No.
Okay, it was really cool. So you don't do that anymore at this point in time, is it?
I don't, but it might be coming back. So stay tuned.
Okay, sure. Just loved it. So one of the things you also said, Chris, I think was really cool, and hope other people are listening, that you certainly have a lot of experience, yet I loved your comment about the fact that you still love taking courses and still learning. And so, and to talk a little bit about that fact that even though you went to school and all this stuff, you're still taking courses?
I am. I'm taking the improv classes. That helps me become a better teacher and a better improviser. I go to jams. Misfit has jams. They have a jam once a month for short form and long form. And they used to have a Viola Spolin jam, which I went to. And they have a community lab, which is really, really exciting, where you can bring something that you're working on and bring a troupe together and perform as that troupe, perform a character, which is really exciting. My love right now is musical improv. I took a musical improv class from Gillian. She was the instructor. I took that last year, or this year, last summer, I think is when it was. Yeah, it was last summer. Summer, yeah, it was last summer. I'm thinking school year. So yeah, it was last summer, and it was great. It was musical improv one, and it helped me understand the structure of musical improv and learn the chorus and learn openings and closings and two-person scenes. And it was just so much fun, and I'm more confident now as a musical improviser. And I actually went to New York City over the summer and went to a musical improv jam. We did a full musical with professionals, and I'm doing a 10-minute one-man musical now because I feel really comfortable with the improv and musical improv, and really that's my passion right now is musical improv. The class is amazing. I know Gillian could probably tell you more about it, but it's been awesome to do musical improv. That's my love right there.
And before I ask Gillian, let me just ask you one more question about the fact that you said you took this musical improv course. Do you ever bring any of this in your teaching?
Oh, yes, all the time. I am singing to my kids all the time. My life is a musical. I make everything a song. I sing to them. I dance with them. I was teaching kindergarten music today and singing songs with them and dancing with them. And I teach the kids musical improv too, which is a lot of fun.
But do they have fun with it?
They do. It's just really freeing and it's fun. The kids are so musical too. I work at Art Space, which is a art school.
Oh, sure.
So I teach a lot of creative arts kids.
And Gillian, since Chris kind of introduced it to us, before I get about your background, I just love the term musical improv. What is that?
Yeah, so it can show up in two different ways. So you can do, just like the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway, you could do it short form style where you're playing improv games that are musical. And then we also do the long form, the improvised musical, which is what Chris's class focused on, which we actually have a music improv class starting on Saturday at 2. So it's a level 1 class, and you learn how to improvise an entire musical. So that could be anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes. So I've been in several ensembles that do the improvised musical, and we take the title of a musical that's never been written, and then we improvise a 45-minute musical that is the opening and closing night of said musical.
How long does that take to put on?
In terms of how long is the show, or how long does it take to prepare it?
To prepare.
Yeah, so in terms of the class is 3 Saturdays, and so we break apart the elements of the structure. So we do openings and closings the first week, then we do love duets and variety numbers, as well as I Want songs, and then we do a lot of song structure as well. So how do you signal when you're setting a chorus? How do you signal to someone you're ready to take over a verse? What are different kinds of openings that exist? How could we circle back in our closing to like revisit musical themes? And then how do you intersect that with the actual scenes of improv. So you have a story that's happening. So that class is 3 weeks. The practice of music improv, though, I mean, I went through the entire music improv program at Second City, and then I did more classes in it after, and I think it took me a while to become like fully proficient in it, to the point where it's second nature, right? I can understand immediately what's needed. I mean, I think of improv, it's sort of like yoga, right? Or it's like piano. It is a practice, and acting is the same. It's a practice that we revisit on a daily basis. So the script might not change, but we do. So how do I show up in a new way to that script? How do I show up in a new way to that improv game? How do I show up in a new way to that form? So every time we revisit it, we are stronger at that muscle that we've been working.
Talk about Gillian, somebody comes to you and wants to take the course or the upcoming course. And I guess some people tell you that they love to take the course, but they can't sing. Is that a problem?
It's not a problem, and I love that question. So the way that I think about it is, do you love to sing or do you want to sing? Right? So with most improv, it's all about commitment, which the same is true with music improv, is that, you know, if you look at bunches of comedians or even, you know, popular singers, they may not be the best singer. They are unique and they commit to what is going on, right? Like they commit to really singing and their way. They commit to singing their way. And that's really what music improv is about. We don't need people to always hit the right rhythm. We don't need people to always hit the right note. We just need people that are passionate and having a great time doing it.
Do they have to know how to dance?
No, we call it coordinated movement. And really it's like it's very simple. So like if Chris saw me on the back line and I was doing something like this, so a back line is what we call like when you stand at the back. So Chris would see me doing it, and then he is going to pick up the same thing that I'm doing. And then from the audience, it looks like choreography, but it's really just coordinated movement. We just are mimicking each other, and the pattern of it creates the sense that it is dance.
Now, Gillian, your background, I guess, sort of like Chris's, is that you've been doing this for a while. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
When did you start?
I heard your question to Chris, and it did make me think. I was I mean, I started in elementary school, and I was an urchin, and I'm pretty sure it was the Two Merchants of Venice, the Merchants of Venice. I'm not great at my Shakespeare. Not the Two Gentlemen of Verona. That's where I pulled to. The Merchant of Venice. I was an urchin at a Baylor University production, because we happen to know the theater director. And then I did it all through junior high and high school. I have a theater degree as well. I went to the London Academy of Theatre and the National Theatre Institute. And then I've been a working actor and improviser for the last 20 years.
So what got you away from, I guess, acting into improv stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I did a lot of classic theater training, and I knew that I loved acting, but I also knew that I didn't totally fit into drama. I didn't totally fit into Shakespeare or classic works. Like I knew that while I love to sing and dance, I was not the kind of triple threat that Broadway would justify. So I happened to answer a newspaper ad that was one of those audition notices in the back of Backstage right after I had graduated from college. And I did the audition for a local troupe in Minneapolis called Stevie Ray's Comedy Cabaret. They are still around. And I got in. I did not know what I was doing at all. I knew nothing. And they really helped me understand the foundation of improv, and I fell in love. And when I fell in love, it was like a sense of belonging. Like I found like, oh, this is what I was looking for. I didn't know what I was looking for, and I found it. And so then I sought out other folks that I thought were really great at it for their advice, and they all said, go to Chicago, study at Second City. And that's what I did.
By the way, I have to ask you a question. This was actually posed to me by my producer, Cappy.
Yeah.
And she said to make sure you ask these folks the origin of the name, because I just love the name of the Misfit Improv and
Absolutely.
Acting School. What was the
So
origin?
yes, so the origin of Misfit comes from the island of Misfit Toys, which is from an old Rankin Bass cartoon. I don't know if you remember, but the Rudolph series of Rankin Bass old cartoons, and in that cartoon, there is an island called the Island of Misfit Toys, and it is a land of quirky folks all looking for a place to belong and find meaning and connection with each other. And that really resonated with me about how I feel that improv serves people, that it is a place where we can find a sense of belonging and connection with each other, and that the art form lends itself to that even.
And to
So
talk
that's
about improv, then you say the art form, but what's so cool about it is it can be for almost anybody. And so talk about
yes.
the fact that Chris had been an actor and theater teacher all these years, but assume you have a lot of people who weren't actors or had no desire to be actors.
Yes.
But help me on this. It can be helpful to, I guess, folks in just about any profession or career. Would you say so?
Yes. And I would actually offer that we're all improvisers
And good
all the
point.
time, right? So, people say to me, "Oh, I'm not an improviser." And I will say, do you know what I'm going to say next? And they say no. And then I say, well, then we're improvising, right? So, and that's really kind of what improv is, right? Is there more structure to the craft? Of course. And it's all about being able to think on your feet in a calm and collected way that builds connection with other people. Is there more? Sure. Does it focus on life skills though? 100%. Like active listening, the ability to evaluate how to make strategic decisions in a moment. Really focusing on what I would consider a life philosophy, which is yes and, which is not that I 100% agree with you, it's that I hear you. Yes, I hear you. And then and is the bridge to what I think, feel, or do about that. And I actively even try and use that languaging in my life. I'd love to hear though, Chris, what do you feel like improv has brought to your experience that's beyond acting?
Wait, before
Well, I
Chris
did.
answers that, Chris, let me just jump in. Thank you, by the way. This is great. So I'll just leave and I'll come back in half an hour and let you two guys. Thank you. Makes my job easier. I'm sorry, Chris, cut you off.
No, you're fine. I did a TED talk actually on the power of yes
Right.
and last year with a TED talk conference from Franklin School of Innovation where I taught, and I did on the power of yes and in my TED talk I talked about how yes and can be applied to anyone in any part of your life, not just theater, not just acting, but also just like thinking on your feet in daily life, like when the copier
Right.
is jammed or you run out of gas on the highway. So you can use this yes and technique for any situation, for community leaders, for parents, for anybody, for all ages. So I think that that's really important. That's really helped me in my life. Just think on my feet, make a plan B, especially when I'm teaching, when my lesson doesn't go right and the Wi-Fi's out. And what do I do? I accept it and then I
Yep.
add on to it and move forward. And that's what we do in improv. We move forward. And like I said, we could teach improv to any age group. We're offering classes for kids as young as 5 years old. We have a 5 to 9 class and then a 10 and up class that we're offering right now, and they're starting this weekend as well. The same time, the same weekend as the musical improv class, and they're going to be on Sundays. 10 for the younger group, 5 to 9, and then at 11 to 11:30 for the 10 and up group. So I'm really excited just to teach these basic skills to younger kids because they can understand the and in their own way, which
Julian,
is great for teaching them. Yeah.
I would imagine, Gillian, this would be a great skill too. I don't know if you've taught the course for certainly salespeople and also
Yep.
lawyers. I don't know. Have you
Yep.
done any specialized kinds of courses, or do you plan to have any like that?
Yep. So one of the other things that I do is that I'm a corporate trainer. And so I work with mid-level executives. And then I also have a coaching certification in development for corporate folks who are in the corporate world. And so much of it lives in Yes, and to me, organizations make a distinction between corporate improv training and topic-based training. I don't. I think they're all the same thing. However, we do teach corporate workshops. That's all available on our website, which is misfitavl.com. And we customize that workshop to whatever your particular perspective is. So if you're a lawyer, we can talk about how to communicate effectively and make connections within the courtroom or with your clients. We also, when we think about sales, we can talk about data with storytelling, how to really make a connection that is based in emotional intelligence and retain information so you're making honest and deep relationships with your customers. We also can talk about innovation, so how to stay on a competitive edge. So yes, we do. That is also my professional background. As we know, actors, we usually have more than one thing going on. So that's one of the hats that I wear as well.
Well, if I could put you on the spot, Gillian,
Yeah.
I didn't rehearse this with you, but I'm going to also involve Chris in this as well, is that, can you show an example, and Chris kind of alluded to it, of how a teacher could use this? In other words, let's say Chris is taking a course with you, and it's a Improv 101 or whatever you want to call it, and it's you're working with Chris as a teacher. And so he comes to you and wants to know, how can he use this? I'm curious to see, Chris, how you do this. I didn't prepare for this, but you want to learn how you can use some of this yes and stuff in your classroom. So Gillian, can you run with that a little bit?
So first I would say, so Chris, what is it, where do you feel like there is space that you are struggling? What are coming up as challenges in your classroom?
Challenges with middle schoolers is getting them to participate, getting them to share their ideas and participate. Yes.
Great. I love it. So, thinking about that, and is part of it. So I'm just trying to sort of do a root cause analysis. So participation, are they also sitting in desks while you're asking them to participate? What does the classroom environment look like?
Some of them might be sitting in desks, and also they're kind of self-conscious about acting in front of other people. They're not all signed up for improv. So sometimes I teach classes of kids that they don't sign up for theater, but I teach theater to all kids. And so these are kids that haven't signed up for it, but getting them to participate and engaging them is challenging.
Sure. So just thinking about, rapid fire ideas of something that could support you. I'd like to share with you an exercise that's called These Are 5 Things. And it's all just built around pattern, right? So humans love pattern, children love pattern. They love to feel like they're winning too, right? We all love that feeling. And the way that it works is this. So you are going to give them a category, and then we will count it off together, and then we'll say a little chant. So let's say I gave the category to your classroom of 5 fun things you could do this summer. So let's say I gave that to you, Chris. You're going to give me at least one. So give me one. What's 5 fun things you could do this summer?
Swimming.
Okay, and then together, Blaine and I are going to count. We're going to say 1. And then you're going to give us another one.
Okay, that's 1, Chris.
Snorkeling.
2. We're going to count off each one, Blaine.
2.
Yeah.
Building a sandcastle.
3.
Surfing.
4.
Eating ice cream.
5. And then all together as a whole class, we're going to chant, "These are 5 things." And then it's going to move. Yes.
5 things.
These are 5 things. Yeah.
Yes. And then you're going to pass, and then you're going to have that student pass it to the next person. So that student gets to choose their category. And it's just like all people, right? Adults are the same. We all need the ice broken. We need to find that moment where we level status, where we choose to be vulnerable and connect with each other. Same is true with kids. So we gamify, to use a very sort of corporate-y word, we gamify the experience of engagement.
Even that activity, the cool thing about it, though, it sounds like it was fun, even just on a short basis.
Yeah.
Can a child or student or adult say they can't think of 5 or they only have 3, or can they pass? What happens?
I mean, there's no requirement to do anything exactly right. That's what I will say, right? Is that the way that it happens, we then interact with it. So if somebody is like, I only have three, then we might say, these are three things, and then pass it off to the next person, right? So
Yeah.
we want to live in that space of creating a psychologically safe space for everyone. And sometimes when you're engaging or exercising that new muscle, it may take a second for your brain to catch up, and that's okay. We know that that's part of the process. It's no one's grading us on improv. It is an interactive experience that is about what our experience is.
Now, the 5 things you mentioned, Chris, are those 5 things you really want to do this summer, or you just made them off the top of your head?
Well, some of them I've done or want to do, or some of them some of them I want to do, like snorkeling, and some of them I've done. I want to snorkel, I want to surf. Some things are things I've already done. I love swimming, so.
And you love eating ice cream, or I do.
Yeah, I do love eating ice cream, so it's
So
an easy one for me.
I'm there. I pass on one. So they take this course, and is there ever at the end of the course, is there a ceremony, or is there a graduation, or?
So we have a student showcase, which, to your question earlier, Blaine, people don't have to do the showcase. It's an opportunity for them to perform, but they don't have to. And we do them for both our adult and kids classes, and they perform for family and friends. Yeah.
Yes.
And so same thing too, Chris, when you teach in school, is there a final production or something along those lines?
Oh yes, when I teach it in school, we do a showcase. If the kids want to participate, they would do a showcase of games, short form or maybe long form, and we perform for parents.
And do
And
most of them
they love it.
participate in it?
What, I'm sorry?
Do most of them participate in it?
Most of them participate in it. Yeah, most of them will participate. I really don't have kids that don't want to participate in the showcase. I've always had kids participate in the showcase in some capacity. All the kids have participated in some way. They might not do certain games, but they participate in some of the games for sure.
Now, Gillian, is that something that happens if somebody takes a course, at your place? Do
Mhm.
all of them, they finish the course and then they all lead to a final production of some sort, or a final class?
Yes, except for music improv, because that's a short workshop version. It's really about just teaching the form. But the other levels too, they all have a showcase.
Now, it must be very exciting for both of you, and I know I've read about it from Chris, is that when you work with a student and then they finish with you as a teacher, but then go on to professional stuff. I remember I saw on
Right.
Facebook, it was very exciting. You were writing about somebody not too long ago, and he kind of really was hitting it big, right? I
Broadway.
think Chris, right? You had somebody, or?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was one of my first students that actually I taught when he was 5, and he was my creative drama class. And I did improv with him. Was his director for several musicals. He was the lead role in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and he was in several others. Dear Edwina, which is a junior version, and then The Wizard of Oz. And he did shows at Ashland Community Theater. And then he went to school for theater, and now he is in Chicago, the national tour of Chicago, as understudy for Amos and in the ensemble, and he's pursuing his dream. And it meant a lot for me to come see that show, to see him now pursuing theater and using those skills that he learned in his improv classes, at such a young age of 5. It was really cool.
I remember I was so impressed when I read that. And same thing too, Gillian. Do you have that too with people you've worked with and they go on to other things?
I mean, yes, lots of youth that I worked with in Los Angeles. So we didn't really talk about this yet, but my husband and I just moved to Asheville in February from LA. So I not only taught them, there are lots of folks that I've also worked with that are doing extremely well for themselves in the entertainment industry, and it's always exciting to see that.
Well, that was a big move for you then. And that's when Chris first mentioned it, that, I never heard of you. And he said, you got to speak to this Gillian. And I said, I want Chris to be on the show. And said, no, I won't do it unless Gillian's on it. But it's really a gutsy move to just come to Asheville and start this Misfit improv group.
Yeah.
What, you just want to do it, or how do you choose Asheville to do this in?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the question. So no, we didn't just choose it. My parents are here half time, and during the pandemic in LA, everything stopped, and it was just sort of a moment of reflection of what can our life look like, what else could our life look like, and also just being faced with the mortality of what happens when the ones that we love aren't there, and how could we be spending our time to be closer to them. So we made a decision, my mother-in-law is also on the East Coast, to move to Asheville to be closer to our parents, essentially. And also the fact that most auditions are self-tape now. I generally can work out of Atlanta. I found an agent in Raleigh. My LA agent kept me on for things that are not local. And it's just more virtual than it's ever been, right? So I tape everything actually in the classroom at Misfit and send it off through the web. So it's possible. Things are possible.
But what's so cool about your story, though, is that not only it's possible, but you then just all of a sudden start doing it. And in
Yeah.
other words, Chris and I were having a conversation or a show or something, and I said, "What are you into?" And he starts telling me about this improv work he's doing. And Chris, I'd seen lots of shows and other stuff. I said, "Well, that's kind of cool. Who's doing this?" And then he mentioned you. And I said, "Wow." So, I mean, that was a pretty gutsy move, though, to come from LA to not just do one little course, but to all of a sudden do 9 courses or 9 courses you have on the books.
Yeah.
So is it every semester you're going to be offering courses, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we offer classes every 8 weeks. So we have 9 running right now, but we've run more than that throughout the year already. So, the goal is that we'll have a full, I mean, I don't even know if the word goal is the right word. I think it's already happening, but to have a thriving training center that offers courses year round. And yeah, in improv, and then we do some on camera. There's actually an on-camera class happening right now, in the other room. So
And so talk about your teachers. So you teach some of the courses. You mentioned
yes,
Chris teaches some of the courses now.
that's correct. So Chris is the head of our kid and teen program. Then we also have our long form program is run by Joe Carroll, who
Okay.
Chris has also taken classes from. And then we have Marlene Thompson, who is also on faculty, and she is also our school media coordinator. And so she helps us run our social media and manage anything that's related to media, essentially. Yeah. So that's currently, we have a faculty of 4.
Very cool. And I know Joe Carroll, and Joe's been a
Yeah.
guest on my show as well. Very talented guy. And so, Chris, that must have been something for you that all of a sudden been doing improv all these years, but now all of a sudden to become part of a school, a second school for you. That's quite something.
Another school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I really haven't taken adult classes until like a year from this month. Actually, last October is when I started taking improv classes from Joe at Black Mountain Art Center, and I loved it. And we have the same group of people that have been in the first class that are now in this performance lab a year later. And that shows you that connection of improv. You bond with those people, you connect with those people, and you take classes with them, and they become better using those skills. Misfit has a special mission statement about inclusive improv and inclusive community, to really connect people and to and let it be a safe space for people where they feel comfortable performing on stage. And that's why I do it with the same group of people, is because I feel comfortable with those people performing with them. I know that they've got my back and they're going to support me. And that's a big thing about improv too, is the people you do improv with, they have your back. They're going to make you look good.
And Gillian, talk also about the age range. And so you mentioned a couple of courses, and Chris mentioned that he teaches some of the younger folks. What's the age of the students who take improv courses with you?
So we have classes for 5 through 9, and then we have 10 and up, because we've found that sort of tweens live almost on the edge of teens. So 10 and up is how we think of it. And then for our adult classes, it's 18 and up, as long as you want to take it, right? There's no sort of age limit. And one of the things that Chris said that I think is ties back to the question you asked me earlier, Blaine, about what improv gives us, or gives anyone, even if they're not an actor, is also the social element, right? Is that we find humans, we find friends, we find community. And I know for myself, that has been true for me with improv every place I've been. So Minneapolis, I found community. Chicago, I found community. Then when I moved to LA, I found community. And I found it all through improv. And then in Asheville, the same is true as well.
One of the things Chris mentioned, which is kind of cool, I guess, about improv, the fact, Chris, you were saying that people have your back in that, that you're working in this, that you're all
Yes.
working in this together.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're all in this together, and you're not to quote High School Musical, I love High School Musical, but we're on this together. Yeah, because we're on this together. Anyway, we support each other, and like in scenes, we want to make each other look good because we have each other's back and support and connection, and we're not trying to like take over the scene or dominate the scene. We're working together. We do this thing called organic improv, where everyone is in a scene together. Becoming like one object or one substance. Like maybe today we did, we were all radioactivity in the scene. We were like radioactivity, and we were like being radioactivity, and all were together as one. It was really cool. We repeat the same phrase, and we're all connected, and we work as an ensemble, which is really important in theater, which I teach kids, as working on as an ensemble, as a team, as a group. And we play games just to build that community, build that team and ensemble, to have kids work together and to work together in a social setting, which is great, especially after the pandemic. Kids need to interact with humans again, and that's so important. And that improv is a great way to teach kids and anybody those skills.
Julian, were you doing any of this improv stuff during the pandemic via Zoom?
Yes.
Can it
So
be done that way?
it can, and I will qualify that it is different. It does create a different experience because we become, a box, so the interaction is limited. I can't see your full body. We're not inhabiting space in the same way. That being said, we can still create a scene. We can still create the who, the what, the where. We can still have emotion. We can still have character. We can still find creative ways to imply that we're in the same space with each other. So in terms of classes, I did some. It was not my favorite way to teach. And what I mostly did was corporate holiday improv shows for corporations. So a lot of of holiday short form improv shows.
And if I can put you on the spot, Chris, again, I'll ask Gillian the same question. But if you had a favorite person to do improv other than Gillian or Joe Carroll, do you have a favorite improv person you like watching?
That's a good question. Like, you mean like not people I'm taking classes with, like a comedian
Right.
or someone?
Yeah, or it could be
famous?
somebody local, but somebody, a comedian or somebody you've seen professionally do improv. Somebody come to mind?
Well, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Those guys on Whose Line Is It Anyway are
Okay.
hilarious. Wayne Brady is one of my favorite improvisers because he does a lot of musical improv. So I really look up to him. He's very inspiring for me because he just can just make up songs on the fly and just sing lyrics. And I love watching that show. And they're very impressive. That's how I got involved with improv, is watching that show growing up as a middle schooler and as a teenager. And then say, hey, I want to do that someday. I want to do those games. So
Is that still on the air? Is that still on the
Yes.
air?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And same thing too, Gillian. Do you have anybody that you like watching or recommend
Yeah,
people should see?
it's interesting that Chris said Wayne Brady, because I would affirm that. I think Wayne Brady is incredible. I also think that, so Wayne Brady has a comedy partner named Jonathan Mangum, who I used to be in a musical improv troupe with, and he was one of the most fun people to play with ever. He's super smart, he's very giving, he's so fast, he's really kind, and I always knew that I was going to be fully taken care of in that experience. I also do a two-person that I take to festivals with a guy named Jay Suko that's also out of LA. And Jay and I both have a Second City background. So we speak the same language and understand the move that the other one is going to make before we even start to make it. And I love to do that two-person with him when we are at festivals.
In terms of improv, people think correctly or incorrectly, for example, of Robin Williams. Was what he did improv, or is it just a funny comedian?
So Robin Williams did kind of a mix, right?
Right.
So Robin Williams, when he was doing stand-up, it's still written material. And Robin Williams was known for being very fast, very on
Right.
the fly. So I have not actually seen written out material from Robin Williams, but my guess is, based on watching it, that it is both written and improvised. So there are moments where he goes off script and then he comes back. And one of the beauty of it is we can't really tell the difference if you're an average person, right? It all feels organic. It all feels like it's happening. And he was incredible at creating the experience in the moment for the watcher.
And two, you said something interesting, and we'll kind of conclude on that, is the point where I'm hearing you say so that improv, or it's done right, is not written down, or it's supposed to not be on the fly. You know, you're not supposed to write a script out and
Right.
just memorize the script.
That
Because
is correct.
that's not true improv. That's just acting, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Acting.
That is right. In acting, we're following a script, and in improv, we're following a structure that we are making up as we go. So we are writing in the moment, we are experiencing in the moment, we are creating in the moment.
You know, it's funny, you're giving kind of a cool recommendation to folks who are listening. If they don't want to act, or they're afraid of acting because of memorizing
Yeah.
lines, you
Yeah,
don't have to worry about memorizing lines, right? If you're improv.
that is correct. And one of the things that Chris and I both love dearly about it is we don't have to memorize lines.
Yes.
And Chris, I'll ask you a final question here. If folks want to follow you or keep in touch with you, what's the best bet?
Probably just my Facebook and Instagram. Christopher W. Martin is the best way to get in touch with me. I stay on social media.
Do
So
you have
that's the
anything
best way.
coming up that people should know about?
Oh, I'm doing the Haunted Trail of Asheville, which is really exciting. It's at the Asheville Adventure Center, and it starts this weekend. I'm doing 11 performances in the Haunted Trail. I've been cast as a professional cowboy. I am a silly pun slinging cowboy, and I'm doing a lot of improv because I'm making up silly cowboy puns and jokes on the fly and saying "See All Saloon" and being a cowboy and like Western Looney Tunes world. And I'm doing that for the next 11 days in October. It's on every weekend in October, starting this weekend, starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
By
So
the way,
11
put
shows.
information on that, if you would, up on that entertainment page I told you about on Facebook, so
Yeah,
people can see it. It's really
I
cool.
I can do that. That'd be great. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
and the same thing too, Gillian. So folks want to get in touch with you. I guess there are two things they should do. They should check out the Misfit website again. What was that again, please?
Yes, it is misfitavl.com.
Okay, and that's the best way to find out what's happening?
So we have that website. We also are on social as well. So if you go to Facebook, we are at facebook.com/misfitavl. And we're on Instagram at misfitavl as well. And it's MISFIT. It's not plural, it's singular. Misfit AVL. And then if they want to find me, I'm at Gillian Bellinger.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Gillian Bellinger, for being my guest on this Blaine's World podcast. Also, Chris, always a pleasure to work with Chris Martin. I'd like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. Hopefully, we'll bump into each of you sometime in the near future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Blaine. We appreciate it.
If you stay with me, I'll sign off and we'll be together at the end. Thanks.